Welcome to Creature Guide Live Daily News. Today we're going over a new species of long-necked sauropod has been discovered, and we are streaming on both Rumble, YouTube, and Kick. And feel free to put any comments into the chat about prehistoric to current animal life. So from Sci News, Gallimiopus popstai, new species of long-necked dinosaur identified. New species of sauropod dinosaur that lived about 152 million years ago has been identified from fossils found in Wyoming. Well, this is taking place during the time when different species of dinosaurs, such as Stegosaurus, Allosaurus, Ceratosaurus, were roaming Wyoming and Colorado, Montana, Utah. All of these states are quite well renowned for late Jurassic fauna, also being from the Morrison Formation. So, who do we have? An Allosaurus and two Ceratosaurus feeding on a carcass of Gallimiopus pasti. Oh, it's another one. He's just looking over, like, what a pity. I mean, that's a pretty typical sort of sauropod response. I mean, there's not a lot going on in that head, but just remembering migration routes, focusing on specific species of vegetation, they probably weren't too picky, and staying hydrated, trying to recall anything else. I mean, also likely if it's a female, remembering how to make a nest and where to deposit her eggs.
But that's all their brains did?
Well, they likely did take care of their young as well. We do have evidence from different series of footprints that the young were traveling with the adults. The question is, at what age did this start occurring? Were they already 5 to 8 years of age, or was it immediately from hatching? I think the ceratosaurs, though, are a bit thin or small in this depiction compared to the allosaurus. That could depend on the allosaurus species, however. So, named Gallimiopus papstai, the ancient beast belongs to the family Diplodocidae, one of the best known groups of sauropod dinosaurs. Gallimiopus papstai is similar to the famous dinosaur Diplodocus, but with more massive legs and a particularly high and triangular neck close to the head. Wait a second.
What?
Particularly high and triangular neck close to the head. The neck is what? Okay, I understand having more massive legs. It's just one of the members of Diplodocidae that's overall more robust. So it sounds like it's more similar to Apatosaurus and Brontosaurus, which are much more dense bone compared to Diplodocus. The fossilized remains of Gallimiopus popstai were found at the Howe Scott Quarry in the northern Bighorn Basin in Wyoming, the United States, by Swiss paleontologists in 1995. So the specimen is not necessarily new, but it's taken more than 2 decades for scientists to make sense of the bones. Oh, and this was back when this was reanalyzed, so that's interesting. Well, by the depiction, this animal is not necessarily too much more heavily built compared to Diplodocus. If you ask me, if anything, it has a bit of a shorter neck, but very similar to Diplodocus in general. I do think the back part of the tail is a bit odd. But besides that, in some cases it's almost the same. Did it say whether specifically? No? That's odd. Let's look up Diplodocus. I mean, this is rather strange. The species name Papstai honors the finder of the holotype specimen, Dr. Ben Pabst, who also created the skull reconstruction and led the repreparation of the specimen and its mount at the Sarrier Museum Athol in Switzerland. So Diplodocus.
Okay, what kind of picture do you want?
Um, I mean, it can be a drawing or from a documentary. Both. I do think the walking with dinosaurs model is very iconic. It's very likely that Diplodocus, in when it comes to the different skin preservations that we have discovered of Diplodocus specifically, it's very likely that it had osteoderms linking from the back of the skull down to the tail. And it's also, when it comes to the skull, it's really not bad for Diplodocus, though it probably had lips. Now, one of the odd things about Diplodocus in the show is that at certain points you have it where the tail is sticking up in the air. It likely would have simply have been completely horizontal with the rest or most of at least the core of the body. It's very likely that Diplodocus had a vertically positioned neck, so reaching higher up into the tree canopy and not being horizontal like what has also been reconstructed with creatures such as Apatosaurus and Brontosaurus, even different species of Titanosaurs. All these animals likely had vertical necks. Yeah, this is not a bad reconstruction. It's definitely giving it much thinner legs compared to its body size because of how light Diplodocus was compared to different species of sauropods around its length. Diplodocus is reaching around 90 feet or pushing over 31 meters and probably only weighed maybe 15 to 20 tons. So, in the size spectrum, it's a medium sized species of sauropod. Fact, it might be on probably the lower medium size. But when it comes to length, it's definitely up there with the larger species, such as, or the longer species, like different other species of Diplodocids, such as Supersaurus, and then different species of Titanosaurs, like Patagotitan, Argentinosaurus, also the Mamenchosaurs. Now, I'm guessing these are probably very young allosaurs are coming into contact with this Diplodocus because Diplodocus was not this tall compared to Allosaurus. It was slightly taller than the carnivore, but these would be hatchlings, if anything, in this instance.
Wait, slightly taller?
Allosaurus, depending on the species, if you're talking about Allosaurus fragilis, it's probably pushing somewhere around 7.2 to 7.8 feet in height, or probably 2.3 meters. They're not too tall for a carnivore, so I'd say probably in the mid-size realm for height. Sauropods. Now, I do like the instance how it's making out like these animals are traveling or making migration during the dry season. You would have had very arid areas in the United States, even back in the late Jurassic during the dry season occur. Um, this could be taking place like over a dried up lake or simple floodplain. Also, just the conifer landscape. But the allosaurs, looking at their reconstruction, they are a bit odd. The one on the left seems rather stocky in stature. The one on the right seems a bit better, but it is also just simply turned the other direction. Mm, I guess the problem is that these couldn't be young allosaurs because of their overall builds. They have a very adult look.
It's with
So
their
it's
teeth.
probably Allosaurus fragilis. Yeah, both of these animals, the teeth on the Diplodocus are far too long compared to Diplodocus teeth in a realistic form, and the Allosaurus should also have lips. I don't think their teeth, however, might be too far off. They seem to be okay.
OX7. Okay, I'm not reading. Oh, that's weird. Hell yeah.
Well, it's good to hear that you're here, Theropod. Um, Now, when it comes to Diplodocids, if you're looking at Brachiosaurs, Titanosaurs, but I guess really comparing Brachiosaurs with Diplodocids, is that Diplodocids tend to have shorter forelimbs compared to their hind limbs, not by too long of an extent. Like it's much more exaggerated or exasperated with Brachiosaurs, considering they have much longer forelimbs compared to their hind limbs. They're
He said, "Tell me something about Magnurosaurus."
Oh, okay. Well, that's a jump in time. That's towards the very end of the Cretaceous period. That is a bit of a distant relative to the Diplodocids. It is actually a member of the Titanosauromorph lineage over in Central Europe, about 67 million years ago. Do you want me to spell out his name?
I got it.
Oh, oh, right. Okay. So this animal was probably pushing somewhere around 14 to 20 feet in length, or somewhere between 4.2 and 6 meters, and probably didn't weigh much more than maybe 2,000 pounds, or just around a ton, or 950 kilograms. We have, however, found in the past year a much larger species of sauropod inhabiting the same region that, and also in the same time in the Hatseg Basin Island ecosystem that could weigh over 11 tons. So, still a bit of a ways, but approaching the size of Diplodocus carnegie from the Jurassic. Um, Also, that animal, I believe, was probably pushing around 45 to 50 feet in length, possibly slightly longer, or somewhere between 14 to 15, 16 meters.
I I'm the looks of them, though, vary on here, like, massively of what they look like.
Um, well, if you're, well, I'm guessing you're looking at a mixture of documentary pictures and art.
Well, some of it has it with a giant neck,
Oh,
and then some are just
it's actually not a bad reconstruction. Seems to be a bit of an older painting, but it's really not bad. Macurosaurus is probably going to be a whoa. Okay.
well, the Isle did it to it.
Um, yeah, this is definitely far off from a Megalosaurus. You could say that in certain Titanosaur reconstructions, this model does share certain similar characteristics, but in the end, this is not like any species of dinosaur.
By the way, he said you passed.
Um, all right, thank you. Also, we don't have any skin remains of any species of sauropod dinosaurs showing that they had elongated spikes along their shoulder
Yeah,
blade.
look at this.
What on earth? What's with those feet? What is this thing? It looks like it's walking on drumsticks, like chicken or turkey drumsticks, and it's got little Godzilla or some other type of dragon hind feet. What is with this thing?
I don't know, but I've seen a number of them where they're doing this to it.
It
Hold on.
almost looks like somebody took a tater tot and then just made it really thin.
Look,
Okay, this is better. They definitely gave it also a much more robust sort of certain lineages of titanosaurs had much wider necks compared to certain other species that were actually quite thin. Also, if you're looking at saltosaurs, they didn't have very robust necks. They are giving it armor, which is very possible that Megalosaurus might have had the type of smooth armor that you would find on different species of saltosaurs, even from different species back in the Jurassic. But that's really not a bad specimen. It looks immense. So that was about 67 million years ago over in Hungary and Romania. Referring to different species of carnivorous predators that might have hunted Megalosaurus, at least at the moment, we don't really have any evidence for, at least at the moment, Um, that might have been a bit repetitive, but for certain species of abelisaurs or tyrannosaurs to have hunted this animal back in late Cretaceous Central Europe. So it's a big question, not including the massive as darkid pterosaurs like Hatzegopteryx, which technically, looking at the overall build of that pterosaur, it could take out a full grown adult. So you possibly just didn't need the other predators of the ecosystem, but it's possible they were there.
so OX7, did you think he's gonna go blank when you said that or ask that?
Where were we? Oh, so the fossils, back to this late Jurassic species of diplodocid found in Wyoming back in 1995, but named, I think back in 2017. The fossils were analyzed by Dr. Emanuele Tschop from the University of Turin, Italy, and Dr. Octavio Marius from the Universidade Nova de Lisboa. and the Museum of Lourinhã, Portugal, who concluded Gallimimus papsti lived at the late Jurassic epoch. Okay, so we got almost all of um, what we've got. Lucititan on the case. Sounds like we also have Allosaurus europus on the case, and Pagomestes. Well, I'm referring to the paleontologists as the different dinosaurs because Lucititan and Allosaurus were found over in Iberia. So the type specimen died at a particular ontogenetic stage where histology indicates that it reached sexual maturity, but neurocentral fusion in cervical and dorsal vertebrae has not yet been completed. A lack of fusion between vertebral centra and neural arches can thus not be taken as definitive evidence for a juvenile ontogenetic stage. Um, yeah, I mean, very true. Interesting. Whoa, wait a second. Is this the skull that they found of Gallium opus? This is very complete. Wow. This is astounding to see. What is it missing? A single tooth on the upper jaw towards what, the right side? That's
Doesn't
pretty
have a
good.
brain.
Yeah, it's there. It's just small. Probably smaller than a golf ball. Um, but he managed. Probably for like a million and a half years, but it can vary even with different species of sauropods. You can have certain genre that lived for over 10 million years, and then you have certain species that maybe only lived for a few 100,000. So it is quite odd. Was it simply due to a massive shift in the ecology of the landscape? Did a certain disease take them out? Were they outcompeted maybe by certain other herbivores? Did they end up mixing with the other species of herbivores? um, reproductive wise. So that's a big question. This is good though. They added furthermore, the specimen indicates that the number of vertebrae in the cervical column of diplodocids might have been more variable than previously assumed, and that the transition from cervical to dorsal elements was variable between genre. Oh yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, I mean, that's definitely not a question when it comes to different types of skull structures in a wide range of different diplodocids alone, not including different types of titanosaurs. But it is interesting when we're looking at many species of titanosaurs, there have been a number of them where the skull has not been discovered, and only different parts of the leg bones, ribs. More recent species of titanosaurs have been discovered with more complete skeletons. Maybe they were just preserved a bit better, which is very likely. And like even more caudal vertebrae or different parts of the tail. When it comes to certain skulls that have been preserved in new species of Titanosaur sauropods recently, we do seem to find bits of like the bottom mandibular jaw or the upper part of the skull. So it's just when it comes to a complete skull, like with this species of diplodocid, and certain brachiosaurs, it's not as common. Although potentially surprising, the high diversity of sauropods in the Upper Jurassic Morrison Formation can be explained by a combination of intrinsic and intrinsic factors that allowed, in particular, irradiation of diplodocidi. Yeah, Diplodocus was definitely exploding in variety during the late Jurassic and would continue into the early Cretaceous. It's around 90 million years ago where the Diplodocid family ends up vanishing, along with different lineages of titanosaurs. The Brachiosaurs, possibly a few million years earlier, so pushing around 94 to 95 million years ago. When is this? This is also about 10 million years after different species of stegosaurs went extinct, or the whole family in general.
Adrian Rojo's in. He's eating some dirt.
Well, hello, fellow ornithopod. So let's head over to the next article. This was a fantastic species of diplodocid. So from Sci News, meet Lagonectes recteri, one of oldest known elasmosaurs.
What?
What is going on? I mean, okay, I'm gonna be honest, it's not too surprising, but this is a bit much. In a study
Couldn't have
published
put the word "the" in there.
yeah. How dare thee. In a study published Friday in the Journal of Vertebrate Paleontology, Paleontologists report the discovery of a partially preserved skeleton of one of the earliest known elasmosaurs from the early Cretaceous, 130 million years ago, of Germany. Yeah, this definitely by the reconstruction does have a very elasmosaur sort of a build for the long-necked marine plesiosaurs. Elasmosaurs, in many cases, especially as you head further into the Cretaceous, tend to be a bit more common in different sediments from North America, different parts of Northern Africa, in some cases, not too common. They have been found adjacent to different South American marine deposits, like over in Argentina, Brazil, possibly Chile. Australia, they become much more common, like around 110 to 125 million years ago. Even Antarctica, as you head further into the late Cretaceous, like around 70 to 80 million years ago. So it's very likely you had plesiosaurs and specifically different species of elasmosaurs roaming the cooler oceans of the Antarctic. Yeah, this is a very good reconstruction. Very odd tail fluke. Now, not all marine reptiles have the same shaped tail fluke. But oh yeah, also very distinct tooth structure, even for elasmosaurs themselves. Um, yeah, Legonectes. It's it has more of a sort of flattened type of a tooth structure compared to other species like Elasmosaurus, Attenborosaurus. So it's widely different. Even the nasal structure where the nostrils are located. Also, like the overall upper and bottom jaw, it's very flat. So, Elasmosauridae were a family of plesiosaurs that flourished during the Cretaceous period about 145 to 66 million years ago. They were fully adapted to aquatic lifestyle and had a distinctive body plan comprised of streamlined body, paddle-like limbs, and a very long neck with up to 75 individual vertebrae. It would differ depending on the species of plesiosaur in which how many vertebrae it had. So it's possible in this instance they might be referring to Elasmosaurus itself or an even larger species of plesiosaur because Elasmosaurus is not the largest species. I think Elasmosaurus reaches somewhere around 25 to 32 feet in length or maybe 8 to 10 meters. So, named Lagonectes recteri, the newly identified elasmosaur was 26 feet. Okay, so approaching the size of Elasmosaurus. 8 meters long, and inhabited a shallow sea around what is now Germany some 130 million years ago. It is interesting how, for how long much of Germany was underwater. You did have it where different parts of the early Cretaceous, even at this point, there were different species of ornithopods roaming certain areas of Switzerland, Belgium, and Germany, like the more famous iguanodon. You also had possibly different species of raptor, like Vectoraptor, roaming the region. We just don't really have any evidence for that carnivore in the area. I'm theorizing this considering we have Vectoraptor coexisting with Iguanodon over in England, like around 132 to 135 million years ago. So theorizing that because Iguanodon was over in Western Europe, that the Vectoraptor would be as well. But focusing on the different marine reptiles, you have it where there have been different species of long-skulled pliosaurs in the region, different species of long-necked plesiosaurs, also from the late
Wait
Jurassic.
a minute, what's a long skulled?
So a species of pliosaur similar to Liopleurodon, Predator X. In fact, let's bring up another species, the Kronosaurus. So Kronosau. Oh,
Okay, how bad is this?
okay. Well, this animal is not from Germany, it's actually from Australia. Also much further forward in time. Yeah, this would not make for a good Chronosaurus. It has an ichthyosaur or possibly even a Ledozichthyes type of a tail. Very far off. Even the skull is rather odd for Chronosaurus.
John Doe said, "Just dropped in to say hi. Going to stay and listen in listening mode." Oh,
Yeah.
wait. Walked around the Natural History Museum here today, and I'm tired.
Alrighty, Pentaceratops.
That's
Welcome
the
aboard. Huh?
that's the one in New York.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, he's got a lot of problems. Also, what's with the nostril placed towards near the center of the skull? That is very far off. It should be much further towards the tip of the snout.
Adrian Rojo said, "Did the marine reptile fight in World War II?"
Um, that would definitely have been interesting. Um, though I'm not necessarily sure if he would have been on anybody's side. He would just be waiting for, um,
Food?
yeah, just anybody to drop by.
Sink a ship so I can eat.
He's probably like hanging out near Japan, so he didn't get canceled. Anyway, so focusing on the Chronosaurus. Oh,
Is that
so
better?
yes, this is closer. It's still a bit odd with the snout and even with the teeth. Chronosaurus does have long teeth compared to certain species of pliosaurs, but when looking at different types from the late Jurassic and even the early Cretaceous, I'd say Chronosaurus might simply have a longer snout compared to its body size than for say the teeth. This one, at least it also has a tail fluke, but the overall core of the animal seems to match a lot better. The fins might be a bit thin, but besides that, they seem okay. So this animal was inhabiting the shallow seas adjacent to, well, actually in part of Australia at this point in the early Cretaceous about 120 to 125 million years ago. So at this time, you also had different species of animals or large species of sauropods roaming different parts of Australia, different areas of Asia at this point, like with different species of titanosaurs, mamenchosaurs. You had also members of the Allosauridae or Carcharodontosaur lineage massively exploding in variety in different parts of Africa, South America, and also different species of stegosaurs on land too. And in fact, over in Asia and possibly Australia. Whoa, okay, so yeah, this is different. Wow. This is definitely he looks fat. It almost looks like somebody took a penguin or a maybe a Hesperornid seabird from the late Cretaceous and then just gave it a Chronosaurus build. I can just see there's something about it that just says penguin. Now, what is interesting is that it's also depicting the
Wait,
pteranodontids at this point.
you're referencing the reptile, not the birds.
No, no, no. I was yeah, the marine reptile or something about him looks like a penguin. I mean, if you look at his overall coloration, I wouldn't necessarily say a king penguin or an emperor, maybe a gentoo, or it's not like a South African penguin. He's probably the closest to a gentoo, maybe one of the South American penguins. But and I do mean the South American penguin, not just the gentoo, which also inhabits part of Argentina. But we do have, it seems, evidence for different species of pterosaurs to have had the ability to dive for their food, like different species of seabirds do today. And like what happens to seabirds when they dive for food, you might have it where a shark, a dolphin, an orca captures them. You might have had similar instances where the marine reptiles wanted some turkey, or I guess just some simple, um, I'm trying to think, not necessarily fish and chips, but like fish and chicken.
I can't get this any larger.
Whoa, is he cannibalizing in this instance, or maybe he's just feeding on a different species of pliosaur? Um, yeah, this is rather odd. This almost reminds me of one of those dinosaur books where I think it's possibly or it's like a T Rex in the background, but then there's this odd carnivore, and it has this piece of flesh sticking out of its mouth, and still couldn't figure out whether it was like a piece of flesh or its own tongue. That's what it reminds me of. This is a very odd depiction. I mean, it looks good. The Chronosaur seems fine. I actually like the skull a bit better than, or definitely the original picture.
You want anything else?
Um, no, I guess that's fine. This animal was pushing around 35 to 40 feet in length, or somewhere between 11 to 12.1 meters, and probably weighed in at 9 to 11 tons. So it was one of the larger species of pliosaur during the early Cretaceous period, and the largest to inhabit the coasts of Australia. So private fossil collectors recovered the perfectly preserved bones of this ancient marine reptile, so referring to the long-necked plesiosaur Lycanectes. Most of the skull, which had a meshwork of long fang-like teeth, vertebrae, ribs, and bones from the four flipper-like limbs from an abandoned clay pit near Sarstedt in northern Germany in 1964. Despite being nearly half a century ago, Dr. Sven Sachs of the Natural History Museum in Bielefeld, Germany, and colleagues were only recently invited to study the specimen by the Lower Saxony State Museum. It was an honor to be asked to research the mysterious Sarstedt skeleton. Interesting. Yeah, it's actually quite a long time ago. So once again, we have it where another species was collected but not thoroughly analyzed. Wow. Okay, well it's good to see we found part of the skull and several cervical vertebrae or neck vertebrae, shoulder blade. It's interesting how that occurs. It's like many fragmented specimens. It's like you're likely going to have at least part of a shoulder blade intact. But parts of the fins, like maybe even when it comes to the toes, and much of the tail. That is interesting. Like a couple of ribs, and it's not hitting me what that bone could possibly be. Maybe part of the pelvis, or no, I don't think it's like the upper femur, the upper thigh. That's a mystery. Still not bad. The jaws of Lycanectes recteri had some especially unusual features, said co-author Dr. Jean Hornung, a paleontologist based in Hamburg, Germany. So its broad chin was expanded into a massive jutting crest, and its lower teeth stuck out sideways. So, yeah, it wasn't just us. I mean, this animal does have a very distinct skull build compared to different other members of the elasmosaur lineage of plesiosaurs. And also, in comparing it to the pliosaurs, technically both lineages are related to each other, just quite distant. They're also related to the ichthyosaurs, but they're even further away into the family tree. So these probably served to trap small fish and squid that were then swallowed whole. They probably also fed on the shelled ammonites that roamed the ocean during the Mesozoic. And okay, it already mentioned squid. Internal channels in the upper jaws of Lagonectes ricteri might have housed nerves linked to pressure receptors or electroreceptors on the outside of the snout that would have helped the reptile to locate its prey. That's interesting. That's actually rarely mentioned in a wide variety of different plesiosaurs. Like, I have heard of the theory, but I just find it quite surprising that all of a sudden this was put out there. It's usually that, well, in some cases, his theory is that's because of how small the head is compared to the rest of the body. And also, with the help of the elongated neck, it could slowly move into a shoal of fish. And supposedly the fish are so
What a fish?
a shoal of fish.
I've
School
never
of
heard. Oh,
school or shoal of fish.
I've just never heard the term shoal.
Um, and the fish happened to be so brain dead that he can just start snatching different fish from the school. I That's a hard theory to find logical because fish are quite alert to other fish being consumed. So I think the receptors and being able to home in on prey or ambush the fish is a much better likely it's a much better look at how these animals might have hunted. Actually, let's bring up Elasmosaurus. So Elasmosaurus. Yeah, it's one of those specimens where they have it crooked in a bit of an odd way. It's possible that Elasmosaurus, plesiosaurs in general, could not twist their neck in that specific manner. They did have the ability to turn their neck to major extents, but not in that narrow of, or I guess that crooked of a position. Seems to be from, what is this, like Jurassic Park Builder? It's an okay Elasmosaurus. I think the skull. It seems a bit too extended, especially towards the back of the face. You can see the extended cheeks and a bit narrow of a snout. This is definitely better. Yeah, this seems much more even with his overall head build. The teeth look good. Also, like compared to this newer species, Elasmosaurus has the slightly straighter, sort of oriented teeth, like many other members of the Elasmosauridae. This is definitely one of the more freakish or odd depictions of Elasmosaurus. Now, it doesn't have a tail fluke, but that's okay. He does have it's I think it seems to be with Elasmosaurus a slightly longer tail compared to certain other members of the plesiosaur lineage. Also, if you're comparing it to different early Cretaceous or late Jurassic, mid Jurassic species,
How's
you
this
could
one?
even find them into the early Jurassic over 190 million years ago. They just tend to there tends to be a bit more focus and talk on certain species of late Jurassic plesiosaurs. Yeah, this isn't bad. Elasmosaurus was found over in North America, so different parts of Kansas, Nebraska, around, well, dating to about 75 to 80 million years ago. That's actually a bit of an odd head. That is not a good looking, especially this right hand picture. What on earth is going on here? It looks like somebody combined a Triassic or an early Jurassic species of neotheropod carnivorous dinosaur and then mixed it in with a lizard from the Permian or some reptile. Actually, no, 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 not a lizard from the Permian. Actually, a certain species of pseudosuchian crocodilomorph. And supposedly stuck it on the head of this elasmosaurid. Now, the picture on the left seems a bit better, at least from the distance, but the head is still far too narrow and very far off from really any species of late Cretaceous plesiosaur, at least the elasmosaurs in general. There were certain species of plesiosaurs, not elasmosaurs. They hadn't evolved yet at this point back in the early Jurassic, like between 180 and 190 million years ago, that had skulls that were large enough to take down other species of plesiosaurs and pretty much most other marine creatures within the ocean. So I'd say the early Jurassic was probably the worst time to be around different species of carnivorous plesiosaurs. Now, the plesiosaurs were always carnivorous, but at that time, smaller fish and ammonites were not their main source of food. It was pretty much everything else. After that, they decided to become quite docile. Yeah, it's not a bad reconstruction. The teeth look good, slightly slanted or diagonal, and a bit of a less narrow skull, though I guess you could say it's somewhat in between. Very distinct. The cheek muscles are back here, but they're not as protruding as what we saw in one of the other artificial images. So this actually looks much more realistic. The fins seem okay. The core of Elasmosaurus is also relatively short compared to its body size. This is something that we see in certain other larger species of elasmosaurs.
I asked
And
I asked John Doe how long he worked today, and he said he just went there to walk around and saw the planetarium, movie Encounter, and the Milky Way. Spent 4 hours there. Just likes walking around and enjoys dinosaurs and animals in general.
No, that sounds pretty good. Let's see. Did I? Oh, when it comes to Elasmosaurus, so this creature probably reached somewhere around 4 to 5.5 tons. And you have to take into account that a lot of the weight is focused specifically on the core and not the neck of this animal, despite the overall length, which is probably pushing around 30 to 35 feet or 9 to almost 11 meters. Okay, so let's head back to the article. Also giving this creature a bit of a nocturnal feeding habit, which is certainly possible with different species of marine reptiles. It seems to be the case with the dolphin-like ichthyosaurs of the late Jurassic and the Triassic, Jurassic, and early Cretaceous. I think they disappeared by around 90 million years ago. So it is interesting. On land, you have it where during the early late Cretaceous or during the first 10 million years, different lineages of sauropods going extinct, like the brachiosaurs and the diplodocids, different species of or lineages of carnivores, like the carcharodontosaurs, are going extinct. And then you have in the oceans where the different lineages of pliosaurs, ichthyosaurs, and even certain lineages of plesiosaurs are being wiped out, and the ichthyosaurs. So the jaws of Lagonectes recturi had some. Oh, I already said that. Its broad chin was expanded into a massive jutting crest, and its lower teeth stuck out sideways. They probably served to trap small fish and squid that were then swallowed whole. Internal channels in the upper jaws of Lagonectes recturi might have housed nerves linked to pressure receptors or electroreceptors on the outside. I think I already read this. Just wasn't hitting. Okay, the bones also showed evidence of chronic bacterial infection, suggesting that the animal had suffered from a long term disease that perhaps eventually claimed its life. Wow, there's a lot going on here with this specimen. It's actually quite fascinating to hear, but it's unfortunate what was occurring with this elasmosaur individual. The most important aspect of this marine reptile is that it is amongst the oldest of its kind, said co author Dr. Benjamin Keir from the Museum of Evolution at Uppsala University in Sweden. It is one of the earliest elasmosaurs, an extremely successful group of globally distributed plesiosaurs that seem to have had their evolutionary origins in the seas at once in undated Western Europe. So, wait again. How long ago was this? Okay, 100, yeah, 130 million years ago. This would be one of the oldest species of plesiosaurs, or I mean, elasmosaurs to exist. You had plesiosaurs evolving somewhere around 195 to 200 million years ago. So they were around for a majority of the Mesozoic, but they had not evolved in the previous Triassic period. Same thing with the pliosaurs. And well, the pliosaurs would evolve a bit later into the mid Jurassic. But the ichthyosaurs were already ruling the ocean back in the Triassic, like over 220 million years ago. In fact, I believe we have evidence of ichthyosaurs already inhabiting the ocean somewhere between 245 to 250 million years ago. Okay, well, yeah, this was good to see. Let's go forward into the Cenozoic era. So from KFYRTV.com, update. Hunters, locals address gray wolf sightings in J. Clark Cellular Wildlife Refuge. Wonder where this is. So J. Clark Cellular Wildlife Refuge, North Dakota. U.S. Fish and Wildlife has responded following an uptick in reports of gray wolf sightings on the J. Clark Cellular Wildlife Refuge. They said last fall they received reports of wolf like animals from the refuge. Staff have recorded what appears to be gray wolves on several trail cameras. They added they are unsure if the wolves frequent the area or are living there. This is definitely rare or very abnormal for present day North Dakota. I mean, wolves are native to the state, but they haven't been here for quite some time. You have it over in corresponding Minnesota, that there are few thousand wolves, and over in Montana towards the west of North Dakota. You have some wolves over in the western part of the state, not really too much in the central or eastern area of the country. I mean, state. So the organization said in part, wolves are typically worried to come too close to humans, but refuge visitors that observe wolves should remember to keep a safe distance. Okay. Here's the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's full statement. In the fall of 2024, members of the public reported sightings of wolf-like canids at J. Clark Cellular National Wildlife Refuge. Since then, refuge staff have monitored the refuge and recorded several trail camera images of what appears to be gray wolves. They also continue to receive and follow up on intermittent sighting reports from the public. At present, we do not yet have sufficient information to determine if the observed animals are transients or residents on the refuge. So we are continuing to follow up on reports to gain a better understanding. Is there anything else? Seems to be it. Oh, so the J. Clark. Whoa. Um, it was a bit further up. Little more. Okay, I think a little more. Okay, so the J. Clark Cellular Wildlife Refuge spans just shy of 90 square miles in north central North Dakota. So this is pushing like 150, 160 square kilometers. It's home to hundreds of species of animals, including a new one that's raising concerns of those who use the area. Hundreds? Is this including the insects? Even then, actually sounds kind of small. Actually, I wonder how many species are just bats that might roam the area, but I'm not too familiar with this specific protected area in North Dakota. In fact, many protected areas in the states, there's that one turtle wildlife refuge that you have like different populations of moose in the area towards the north central part of the state, and it's connected to virtually the same habitat over in southern Saskatchewan in Canada. So recent gray wolf sightings at the J. Clark Cellular Wildlife Refuge over the past few months have given some visitors quite the stories to tell. DJ McGillis was deer hunting with a friend in the refuge in late November when they came across a bunch of white moving objects. They had two of them go off to the east, two to the west, and then four of them started coming down the hill towards where we were. McGillis said the animals looked like gray wolves. He and his friend began to retreat back to their vehicle. My emotions were running pretty high at that time, not sure if they were going to keep coming, what they were going to do. While one or two gray wolves is common, larger packs of the animals is unusual for the area. Wait a second, it is? Like, is in the past couple of years, or have I just not been keeping up with the recent wolves that apparently have been inhabiting North Dakota? This is very odd. Nearby resident Todd Larson hadn't seen the wolves, but he did find a print from one in September. He said he's concerned about the impacts the wolves could have on local wildlife. I don't want it to get like it is in Minnesota, where you don't see any wild animals because the number of wolves has increased so much that it's wiped out. Larson added that other animals already balance out the ecosystem. We have coyotes here that take care of anything that dies or roadkill. Yeah, I'm not going to say anything specifically about like how the coyotes are managing the ecosystem because I'm not familiar with the whitetail or mule deer populations in these areas. The moose, if there are any elk in the region, the same thing. Like whether it comes to how many black bears might be in this region, so it's a big question. And then how the wolves would impact it. So we reached out to North Dakota Game and Fish, who says they do not have jurisdiction over the refuge and typically don't handle gray wolves. Well, after mentioning gray wolves are listed under the Endangered Species Act. I think they still are. We also reached out to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for comment. We'll update you when we learn more. Okay, let's take a look at what was occurring in the video. Though, are we going to have to possibly wait a second? Yeah. What is this? Yeah, when it comes to South Dakota, I'm a bit more familiar with wolf sightings that have occurred over in that state, despite it being further away from Montana, also further away from other wolf populations, even over in Wyoming, considering the core of the wolf population in Wyoming is centered in the western edge of the state, really being in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. There are certain packs that have moved further east from the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, but they're still not moving too far. And I'm also, oh, not even just referring to the certain species over, certain packs in Yellowstone National Park or the northern greater Yellowstone ecosystem, but um, ones like towards Grand Teton. Wow, that is a massive pack of wolves, at least for North Dakota. What on earth are they feeding on? I mean, that is immense. Is that a real wolf? Something okay. That one is. I mean, that is interesting. I mean, it's quite astounding. So, that was it. I think it was just that picture.
Wait, yeah, well,
I don't think that's a wild one. He's waiting for treats. Yeah, it's definitely not a
small paw.
a small wolf.
Was he eaten?
I don't think so.
Need to buy
He looks pleased.
found a good meal.
Yeah, same thing for like I guess as you head further south into Nebraska and Kansas, wolf sightings become much rarer, but they have occurred. And they definitely are nowhere to the extent of how many cougar or mountain lion sightings have been occurring in the two states in the past few years. I mean, Kansas has definitely been skyrocketing in the amount of different cougar sightings. Okay, so we're going to give everyone a minute to put anything about prehistoric to current wildlife in the chat, or if you have any comments. Okay, well, thanks for joining. And from prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. This is Creature Guide Live Daily News. We're streaming on both Rumble, YouTube, and Kick. And remember that nothing's better than all animals all the time.